Hello folks, Brian Manzella, Golf Magazine Top 100 Teacher, coming to you from New Orleans, Louisiana today to talk to you about starting your season off on the right foot. As the PGA Tour swings into action in 2013 in Hawaii, you're going to be pulling your clubs out of the attic and the garage and getting ready for a great year of golf. I'm going to show you 3 things that if you can work them into your game, you're going to be very happy with the start of your year and probably the rest of it too. The first thing I think you ought to look at with your golf swing in a new season is how far you turn your torso or your back to the target. Now I know what you're saying right now. You're thinking, Brian, don't you mean shoulder turn? Well, no, I can turn my torso a certain amount and then I can turn my shoulder or stretch my left shoulder across my torso a little bit and maybe create some extra turn, like let's say in the golf swing of Dustin Johnson and a lot of the great players on tour, or in the case of a lot of people like yourself and myself coming out with a couple of extra layers on, faking what we think is a full torso turn by stretching or overstretching that left shoulder at the top of the swing. To get that torso to turn more, think about letting your hips turn more. And to get your hips to turn more, let this right leg straighten in the backswing. Andy Plummer and Mike Bennett of Stack and Tilt fame deserve a lot of credit for popularizing an idea that my teacher Ben Doyle taught me way back in 1987. Ben was a firm believer in the greatness of golf swings like Sam Snead, where Sam almost completely locked his right leg on the backswing. Of course, it probably had some flex, and I bet you if you take that flex out on the backswing, that helps me to be able to turn my torso or my back to the target, which is going to let me come down plane and hit the ball maybe better than I did last season. The second thing I think you ought to look at is the club head feel, your feel for the club head. You know, this isn't a stick game like baseball. It's more of a game like hockey, where the sweet spot is off the feel of the club. So the club feels a little bit different than it would, let's say, if you were just going to hit it with a stick. So getting the feel for that club head, even if it's just, you know, watching some ball games and having a club on the side of your chair and picking it up and getting a feel for that club head, get a little trigger finger in your right forefinger here and feel that club head up against that trigger finger to feel what that club head feels like. And then when you go out, hit a couple little chip shots and don't be so draggy army about it. Just try to flick a couple of them out there and get the feeling of you having control over this club head, this mass at the end of this stick, and that feel is going to go a long way to knowing when you're going to start your downswing and how you're going to deliver the club to the ball. A lot of it has to do with feel. It's something you pick up as the season goes on, but I guarantee you a couple of little short shots with a little more risk than you might have used before will go a long way into get your season started the right way. Then I think one of the most important and overlooked things that you can do with your golf swing at the beginning of a season or really at any time during the year is to get your alignment right of your body to wherever you're trying to aim at address. Now I see people with sticks on the ground and all that stuff helps you line up at some spot out in the distance of a driving range field or wherever it is that you practice. But I'm talking about your body to that line. So many people come to see me for lessons and they don't have their torso or their pelvis, their hip aligned properly. And the number one thing I see is open hips. There's no doubt about it. What I mean by that is at address, instead of their belt buckle pointing dead straight ahead, let's say with a mid-iron, I've got this ball just left the center in my stance, so this club head is pretty close to being in the middle of my stance, and my belt buckle ought to point pretty much in the middle of my stance if it's square. Most people have it open and it throws off the whole thing, especially when you're trying to get this torso to turn far enough with all these good ideas of straightening your right leg and turning your hip. So, how do you practice that? Well, I suggest you find the longest wall in your house. I grew up in a little 920 square foot house over there in Chalmette, Louisiana, and I have a long hallway in that house that I was able to use to sort of line up down the hallway and then get into my address position and then back into the wall. And my little booty right there, when I was 12, 13 years old, learning to set up square, it sure didn't feel right. It was pretty easy for me to have, you know, the left side of my rear end on the wall instead of having them both hit the wall at the same time as I backed in. You're going to be very surprised when you do that what square really is, and it's going to give you a feeling that you're going to be able to take to the golf course. And then when you put all those sticks in the ground, you're going to at least be lined up to the sticks. I promise you, if you work on those 3 things, you'll be very, very impressed with how soon you get some feel for your old golf game and maybe for a new golf game that's better this year than it's ever been before.